Hey everyone, it's Rod with Pow Group. Welcome back on The Pursuit of Wealth, your home for MJ Stocks, crypto assets, and interviews. Today is June 30th. Happy Friday. And in this video, we're going to be discussing Canadians flocking to Alberta in record numbers. It's been a while since I did a real estate update video, and this is an exciting article. I've got all that and more that I want to share with you here today. Before we get to that though, make sure to smash the like. It helps support me and the channel. Doesn't cost you anything, and you can tick the bell and you'll be notified on any future videos or when I go live. Also, less than 100 views, which is also exciting, from away from that coveted 500,000 view mark on the channel. So first and foremost, I love each and every one of you who have supported me along the way. Thank you so much. I should hit that later on today, so definitely we'll be celebrating tonight. But definitely a surreal feeling. And if you recall, I did a couple of videos in the past. I gave an update on my real estate portfolio game plan. So I talked about using cash flow, and then not only that, but benefiting from the appreciation of the home and the asset. So in PEI, I talked about how I sold properties there a few years ago. They were income properties, and I had a house of my own, and then I had an income property, a duplex, and I was taking in rent from both sides. And essentially I was profiting, I was doing really good with cash flow, and then I was able to sell the homes and the assets later on for a substantial amount of money. Almost went up twofold. So if you haven't seen that video, I highly encourage you to check that out. And then I talked about in that playlist, my real estate playlist, I talked about my next big investment. I talked about starting an Airbnb. So not only am I into income properties, I decided to go the short-term rentals route, and Airbnb is making me 3, sometimes 4 times the amount of my expenses per month. So the cash flow there is really, really good. So you're double dipping. And like I said, focusing on the appreciation of that. But if you haven't seen any of those, I highly encourage you to go check those out. And there's also an article here. I did a video on this. You might recall this one. Bank of Canada mortgage payments could spike as much as 40%. And this is the article here from the Globe and Mail. And essentially they talk about how most fixed term mortgages, right? So fixed 5-year mortgages, most of them will be renewed by 2026. And most people got their low interest rates in 2021. So therefore, 5 years later would be 2026. And it's saying that it could spike of 20% or even 40% in their monthly payments. So if you haven't seen that video, I highly encourage you to check that out or read that article. But again, what would that mean? Let me know in the comments below. What would that mean for you and your family if your mortgage payments went up 20, 40% in the next few years, right? And especially people living in Toronto or Vancouver where the prices are sort of getting out of control. That's a massive undertaking, right? So it's time to prepare now. I mentioned it in this video, but this is the article here I wanted to share with you. So Edmonton Journal, very exciting article. David Staples reports Canadians are voting with their feet and they're picking Alberta. Canadians are voting with their feet and they're picking Alberta. Folks from other provinces are flocking here in record numbers for this century. How good is it for Alberta? So good that outsiders might start giving Alberta credit for more than being blessed with abundant oil and gas. So good the rest of Canada might decide to allow this province to go its own way rather than thwart our economy with aggressive outside regulation. One can hope, because a free Alberta is in everyone's interest. In the first 3 months, check this out, in the first 3 months of 2023, Alberta had a positive net migration of 15,786 with 920 people from Atlantic Canada, which is where I'm from, Prince Edward Island, 356 from Quebec, 7,693 from Ontario, and 1,262 from Manitoba, 1,621 from Saskatchewan, 434 from the Territories, and 3,500 from British Columbia. And I actually moved here from Prince Edward Island basically because of this whole reason, right? Because of how cheap it is to live in Alberta, specifically Edmonton, and there's lots to do here in Edmonton. It's fun, the mountains are close by. There's so much beautiful scenery to take in, but it's also super fun here now in Edmonton. Edmonton's definitely on the up and up with the new ice district. There's tons of bands and concerts and shows, and you got the Oilers and Connor McDavid. That alone was enough to draw me here, but just kidding. But yeah, the low rent, 5% sales tax, and just to name a few. And there's so much to do. It's fun, right? Winter's less than awesome, but I have been traveling down south during the winter time, usually for a couple of months anyways, so it's not that bad to endure. But Ontario, meanwhile, had a net loss of a negative 14,732, British Columbia 712 down, and Quebec minus 257. And I've been I've seen tons of people here, just, workers in the service industry and things like that are moving here from Vancouver. And I had some conversations with them, and it's like, oh, why did you move to Edmonton? I'm like, oh, because Vancouver is insanely expensive and it's super cheap here, right? So that's going to be a common thing, in my opinion, over the next few years. And we know that Alberta, the economy boomed in 2007, 2008, and then it peaked, and then it's just been a brutal 15-year slide ever since, really. So it's just cyclical. It's going to be cyclical, in my opinion, and we should start to see that trajectory and that new cycle start, where we start to see the economy start to go the other way and start to boom again. But I definitely think that Edmonton is happening, and Alberta in general. On top of that, 35,932 immigrants from outside of Canada moved to Alberta in the 3-month period. So here's the immigration from other countries has exploded across Canada, but due to its strong in-country migration, Alberta still had the second highest percentage of overall newcomers this past year, roughly 200,000, a 4.5% population increase from last April to this April, behind only Prince Edward Island at 4.6%. Again, that's where I'm from, is Prince Edward Island, and I was able to sell my properties there after, like I said, benefiting from cash flow and then price appreciation of the asset and the home. And then I was able to sell at the peak and then move to Edmonton and then buy in the beaten down market here, right? And now I'm going to do the exact same thing, benefit from the cash flow, which I'm making even more cash flow than I was in PEI. And then hopefully over the next, 3, 5, 10 years, the price of the home and the asset should go up as well. So you're sort of double dipping in that regard, right? And it's very low risk too. If you're buying, a property for $70,000 or $125,000, which I've done here in Edmonton in the condo market, the beaten down condo market specifically, home prices are definitely going up, like single family homes and things like that. But condos, there's no shortage of good deals out here, in my opinion. But as always, not financial advice. This is just for entertainment purposes, only in my opinions and what my game plan is and what my thoughts and opinions are and what I'm doing. But that's pretty much all I wanted to share with you. But again, interesting enough that they mentioned PEI in there, because the whole reason why I moved here was because of how cheap it was. I could have picked Toronto, I could have picked, Vancouver, but why would I do that? I'd rather wait. And then especially if, mortgage rate payments are going to go up 20, 40% in some cases by 2026, there could be fire sales, and that might be the time to go and scoop these properties up in Toronto. So if you're looking at Toronto or you're looking at Vancouver, well, maybe in 2025, 2026, when all these mortgages renew, we could see defaults galore and foreclosures galore, and that's where investors are really going to be able to swoop in and buy low and sell high, right? Most people get it wrong. They buy high, sell low. But like I said, if you just have patience and the wherewithal and just a little bit of research, we can clearly put the pieces together to think that, okay, well, there's probably going to be some tough times ahead. And if you're one of those people living in those areas, well, now's the time to start to prepare, right? And I can't tell you exactly what you need to do. Everybody's situation is different. You need to figure that out yourself. But you can drop in a comment in the description below. And again, I can't legally give you financial advice, but I can certainly let you know what I would do if I were in your shoes, and we can kind of carry the conversation there. But definitely an exciting article here for Albertans, and I myself am very excited for the future. Like I said, Edmonton's super amazing. I love it here. It's the great people are great. It's a small town and a big city vibe, and there's so much to do. Super fun. Absolutely love it here. In other news, Canadian GDP numbers reinforce calls for 25 basis point hike in July. And we know that employment has been very, very strong as well. So that may encourage them to continue the hikes, which is going to be bad for mortgage payments whenever we do go to renew. And if you think about it, interest rates aren't even that high, right, compared to historically, right? They're not that high. The problem is that asset prices and home prices are so high that even a little bit of increase in the interest rates, like the interest rates that we're experiencing right now are not out of the norm, right? We've had interest rates even higher, decades ago. But because of how inflated the prices are, that's why it's really starting to sting, right? And then Canadians also expect inflation to ease, but most are still worried about cost of living. And, rightly so, because inflation, cost of goods, groceries and utilities, rent in some areas are super, getting out of control, and cost of home prices. Like, take a look at this. Here in Edmonton, there's no shortage of, even downtown, you can get a 1-bedroom here for like $1,000 a month rent, or like $1,200. But usually I'd say the average is around $1,200 to $1,400 downtown, like right in the center of downtown. But look at this. This is not downtown, of course, but 1 bed, 1 bath, cable included, internet included, $849 a month. And then you got a studio, $625 a month, right? $899 here for 1 bed, 1 bath. You got $1,600 here for 2 beds, 1 bath. Like, there's no shortage of $1,400, $1,200, $1,300, $965, $1,100, $800. Like, the average is around $1,000. Like, that's absolutely insane. And then take a look here at Toronto, $2,500 to $5,000. Like, are you like kidding me? Like, the average here is like $2,000 for a 1-bedroom. And in some cases, it's a lot higher than that. And then take a look at the real estate trends. Average housing price here in Edmonton, current May 30th to June 27th, $250,000 average sold price, down 46.8% monthly, quarterly 51.8% down, and yearly 39.6% down. Now take a look at Toronto. Toronto housing prices from May 30th to June 27th. 1.2 million average sold price, 2.1% down monthly change, 11.2% quarterly change up, and 0.8% yearly change up. And again, a lot of people, like even when I was living in PEI, a lot of people were selling their properties for, $1 million, $1.5 million plus in Toronto to go buy houses in PEI and retire there, right? And then they, sell their house for $1 million or $1.5 million, and then they'd go to PEI, buy a massive home for $300,000, $400,000, and then pocket $1 million or $500,000 in their bank, right? So it was a no-brainer, and it's just a matter of time before these prices start to come down. And we're definitely in a bubble, and I would say like even in the U.S., right? In Toronto and Vancouver are mimicking the U.S. the most, and they're the most expensive. And then not only that, like I mentioned previously, it's only 5% sales tax here in Alberta, British Columbia, Manitoba, Northwest Territories, Nunavut, Quebec, Saskatchewan, and Yukon, GST. And then in Ontario, you got 13% HST, and then 15% New Brunswick, Newfoundland, Labrador, Nova Scotia, and Prince Edward Island. When I was in Prince Edward Island, if I went to the store and bought something, like any kind of goods or services, 15% on top of that, right? And then here in Alberta, like it's amazing. I go to the mall, I spend $300, $400 on clothes or, whatever I'm going to buy, I only have to pay 5% on that sales tax. Like it's absolutely mind-boggling when you think about it. Like I don't even factor in tax sometimes, right? But yeah, it's crazy. Like the amount of affordability here, and it's no wonder that Canadians are flocking and picking Alberta. And like I said, there's so much scenery here. It's absolutely breathtaking and beautiful. Wish we had an ocean, but you can't have it all, right? And then, like I said, there's probably other places in Canada that I'd rather live, like Vancouver would be one of them. But again, I don't need to live there right now. I don't need to buy at the peak. I don't need to FOMO in. I know that markets are cyclical, and this will just all sort it out. Supply and demand, markets always figure themselves out. And what I'll do is I'll benefit. I sold my properties in PEI during the peak, made a lot of profit there and cash flow. And, not getting greedy, I sold them. Then I moved here, doing the same thing here, buying the beaten down market, focusing on appreciation of the homes and the asset and cash flow, right, to get me by until, cash flow is the short term, and then appreciation of the home as the long-term goal. And I'm talking, 3, 5, 10 years plus. Right, but hopefully the shorter the better. But you just never know. No one can predict time. But I would say realistically, 3 to 5 years, we should start to see the economy and a lot of these aspects of Alberta really start to gain momentum and pick up steam and start to see a bullish cycle, right, where we start to see asset prices just continue to rise, right, and start to match the rest of Canada, similar to what happened with PEI when it was so undervalued, and then it eventually started to rise and match up. Because like I said, supply and demand figures everything out, right? So this is what I'm doing as a stopgap, right? I don't want to live in Alberta forever, but it is certainly a great place to live. I would recommend it to anybody who's thinking about moving here. Let me know in the comments below if you're thinking about moving here. But then, like I said, in 2025, 2026, that might be a good idea to start looking elsewhere where we can potentially get some fire sales and, potentially look at investing in Vancouver or Toronto when all of these, trends start to go the other way, right? Because nothing goes up in a straight line forever. But going to end it there, hope you got some value out of this video today. If you did, make sure to smash the like, share the video with anybody that might find value. It's Rod with Pow Group. Thanks again for joining us on the Pursuit of Wealth. Hope you have a fantastic weekend ahead, and we'll see you in the next video.